Meister Eckhart. Selections from his Essential Writings. Foreword by John O'Donoghue. Translation by Edmund Colledge and Bernard McGinn. Harper Collins Spiritual Classics. Foreword. Frequently it takes us longest to arrive at what is nearest. Thought itself is one of the great mysteries. We engage in it every moment, yet we are seldom aware of the distance we travel and the depth to which we travel in even the simplest act of thought. A great philosopher is a poet of thought. In his hands thoughts shine like diamonds, illuminating the dark memory and gestation of the earth, and capturing the longing of eternal light. Indeed, thoughts become mirrors in which we gain fugitive glimpses of who we are and where our destination lies. Thoughts are the crevices where the vast silence of being is voiced. In an archaic sense, to think is to participate in the mind of God. Meister Eckhart is one of the great poets of thought. After 700 years, we can still enter the cathedral of thought that he built. There we will experience the haunting light, color, and tenderness of what he shows. We will be challenged to the roots of our souls by the fierceness, opaqueness, and danger of God. In Eckhart, the soul is the central threshold. It holds together the symphony of symmetries that play throughout all his explorations. Eckhart says that the soul has two faces, one that is permanently turned towards God and another that always faces the world. The creative and critical negotiation of the tension between these two faces is a secret force that animates all this thinking. The soul is our door into the divine. In an age that has reduced identity to biography, Eckhart reminds us that identity is a more sublime and eternal presence. He says that there is a dimension of the soul that neither time nor flesh nor any created thing can touch. In one of his sermons, not included in this collection, he says, "The soul is created as if at a point between time and eternity, which touches both. With the higher, she touches eternity. With the lower powers, she touches time. She works in time not according to it, but according to eternity." Always in Eckhart, we are reminded of the call and duty we have to our eternal inheritance. We are the custodians of infinite thresholds. Spirituality nowadays is weighted down with a vast panoply of methodologies and pathways. Into the clutter of this spiritual industry, the clarity of Meister Eckhart shines like a light that relieves and refreshes. In contrast to many of his contemporaries, he had no recourse to the notion of a spiritual journey or path. The divine is not a distant soul towards which one must perennially labor like some haunted Sisyphus. There is nothing nearer to us than the divine. We need only to slip into rhythm with it. We are in fact already home, as he says, in the house we have never left. In some strange and utterly distinctive way, Eckhart managed to break through to the divine ground. Put extremely, it is as though Eckhart speaks from within God. It is this subversive viewing point that makes for the beautiful strain in his thought. No number of accumulated or innovative perspectives could throw the lineaments of the eternal into the relief that Eckhart achieves. This is the reason that his language is at once lyrical and speculative. He is not speaking about God, he is speaking of God. Reading Eckhart is, then, akin to reading the poem of God. In him, form and content are one. His language is cut with finesse and precision that achieves for the individual reader unique experiential and speculative apertures into the divine presence. Consequently, the act of reading him is one in which the usual roles of subject and object become reversed. Rather than simply reading a text, the reader soon has a strange experience of the text beginning to read the reader. The texts are utterly alive with a subtle, woven density that invites the reader to return to them again and again in order to further sound out their divine echo. This means inevitably that an initial acquaintance with Eckhart develops into a lifelong and life-altering adventure. Meister Eckhart emerges at a point in the 13th century where fascinating pathways of thought converge. His vast erudition is a ferment of all the great philosophers who preceded him. Along them Plato, Aristotle, Plotinus, Albertus Magnus, and Thomas Aquinas. Because his gaze was centered on something so distinctly different, his vision becomes the site where the thought of his predecessors is angled uniquely to portray what he glimpsed. He is no abstract theory. The speculative serves to intensify the lyrical access to presence, and the lyrical in turn serves to ground experientially the huge sweep of the speculative. The unity of this two-dimensional reach is most evident in his writing on detachment. This is a relatively meagre treatise, but it serves to outline the new region that he is mapping. This is a zone where all the attachment and all perspectives heretofore melt in order for something totally other to become available. Detachment is absolute clearance for nothing other than God. It is a total state. Eckhart says, now detachment approaches so closely to nothingness that there can be nothing between perfect detachment and nothingness. It is absolute and direct and beyond all particularity. This is the nature of God. God has stood in unmoved detachment since eternity in such a way that nothing transient can move him. Poetically he says, true detachment is nothing other than for the spirit to stand as immovable against whatever may chance to it, of joy and sorrow, honour and shame, and disgrace, as a mountain of lead stands before a little breath of wind. Detachment serves the birth of God in the soul. This is the moment when the soul relinquishes the fragmentation of the world and slips in again to the seamlessness of the eternal. Eckhart states, the soul brings forth in herself God, out of God, and into God. She bears him truly outside of herself. She does this by bearing God there where she is God-like. There she is an image of God. One could claim that for Eckhart, the incarnation achieves full realization in the birth of God in the soul. This capacity to bring God to birth invests individuality with huge creativity. It is the deepest longing of the human heart. Eckhart's thought world is fascinating. Indeed, he pushes thought to its furthest inner and outer frontiers. To enter this world is to undergo transformation. Eckhart's crystal thought shapes continue to linger in one's mind. Somehow he becomes a true anchor for divine longing, and a magnificent voyager to regions that one never imagined it possible to visit in thought. John O'Donohue.